They have names like the Frogmen, the Pink Knights, the Thunder Tigers, and Born to Kill. They are the latest and perhaps the deadliest gangs. They are Vietnamese, many of them Chinese from Vietnam. These gangs are fighting for a piece of the criminal action. Their enemies, the Chinese-American gangs who have already carved out their niche in the underworld. The most frightening aspect of all this is that it isn't just a case of gang member against gang member violence. As we saw recently at a cemetery in Linden, New Jersey, they are young, ruthless, and refuse to let anyone get in their way. 10 days ago, just after midnight, here on Canal Street in New York's Chinatown, Vinh Vu was gunned down by a man wielding a semi-automatic 9mm handgun. Vu was second in command of the Vietnamese youth gang, Born to Kill. At age 21, he faced the consequences of his gang's name. The violence of Vinh Vu's death was not laid to rest at his funeral. 3 members of a rival Chinese gang carried flowers that were in fact concealing Uzis. They opened fire on the crowd of mourners, many of whom were gang members who then fired back. 7 were wounded by gunfire, 7 others injured in the ensuing panic.
It does surprise me. It's very atypical for Asian gangs to have this type of high-profile hit in public. They've done it in the past.
The graphic violence portrayed in the 1985 film The Year of the Dragon angered many Asian Americans. But such acts of brutality on a smaller scale are not necessarily fiction. This quiet Vietnamese shopping center in Houston turned into a Wild West shootout at 2:30 in the afternoon.
There was one heck of a shootout going on. Bullets going through windows, hitting streets. It was quite a firefight.
3 Vietnamese teenagers were killed, the end result of a battle between 2 rival Asian gangs. Until now, Chinese gangs have been the dominant Asian criminals in the United States. But that is rapidly changing, according to Gerald Posner, author of Warlords of Crime, Chinese Secret Societies.
Now the Vietnamese are the newest players on the block, and they're saying, let us into this crime that's happening, the extortion, the gambling, the prostitution, the heroin business, and in order to show they're worthy of having a share of the profits, they're showing it in terms of their toughness on the streets.
We see them in California, Texas, New York, Fairfax County, Virginia, the Midwest, Chicago, Madison, Wisconsin, Minneapolis.
But Mike Bowgley, with the FBI's Organized Crime Section, says their mobility sets these Vietnamese gangs apart from other gangs indigenous to this country.
We have not seen gangs of Hispanics or black Americans or white Americans that have been traveling from one part of the country to the other for the purpose of committing violent crimes.
Add to the roster of violent crimes committed by Vietnamese gangs, home invasions against private citizens, acts marked by wanton cruelty and ruthless violence.
We have not seen instances of so many people so heavily armed attacking people in their own homes where you generally regard yourself as fairly safe, and being so particularly brutal and vicious in the way they commit their crime.
Do you think there's some kind of Asian Godfather out there?
It's not just random. It appears to be directed. It appears directed at people who have some wealth that the gang members know about. And how do people from who have traveled from Texas know that certain Asian Americans in Fairfax County are worth robbing?
After Fairfax County, Virginia was hit with 7 reported home invasions in just 2 months last winter, the normally silent Asian community came forward, their reluctance replaced by resolve.
This has become a wave of crime, and nobody is fair. Nobody really is fair.
Convincing Asian victims to cooperate with the police, much less report the crimes, has been a daunting task. Why do you think members of the Asian community are so reluctant to come forward and talk to police about these crimes?
First, there's a cultural factor, that the Vietnamese are very close ethnic groups, so they don't want always to share their problems with people. Besides, they want to project a good image of the Vietnamese community in the United States. Secondly, there's a lack of understanding of the American legal system, or the difficulty sometimes they have, especially of language and others, to express themselves, and therefore they are reluctant to go and have difficult problems to explain.
Win Bick is a liaison between the Arlington, Virginia government and the Asian community. He says workshops that teach Asian Americans the U.S. legal system will encourage them to speak out.
We can exchange information much faster. We can try to trade information about where these gangs look like, how they operate, so that we can cooperate with the police and the other arms of the law.
But more blood will be spilled over the heroin trade, where the real money is. The Chinese have taken business away from the mafia. The Vietnamese now want a piece of that pie. Vietnamese drug smugglers were recently caught in Boston sneaking in heroin in a bean sprout sorter. Chinese gangs are on their guard.
What the Chinese are saying is, let's not fight over this turf. Instead, cooperate. Come in, we'll give you part of this business, and in return, you go out into the dirtiest workforce. It has been an uneasy truce for some time between the Vietnamese and Chinese gangs.
Based on past history, a Chinese-Vietnamese alliance on the streets of America seems improbable. What is likely is that Vietnamese gangs will continue to assert themselves and make up their own rules as they play an increasingly dangerous game.
What they're concerned more about is really carving out a niche of this criminal empire, making the profits that they can make from white powder on the street and all the other businesses of organized crime. And if somebody gets in the way of a good business deal, I think they will definitely eliminate them without any concern or any heartache over it.
For now, the heartache is limited to those whose ethnic pride is threatened.
It's a shame for our community.
These gangs may be high profile, but we hasten to emphasize that they are a very small percentage of the Vietnamese population in this country. The vast majority of these immigrants are hardworking and law-abiding. In the mid-1980s, the Asian Organized Crime Investigators Association was established so that local, state, and federal agencies could exchange information. That has helped, but many feel the real key is recruiting more Asians to fill law enforcement positions. The FBI, among others, is doing just that. Garrett?